You podcast, and I am here with...
I'm Nikki Igbaroola, Project Manager and Content Strategist.
Yes. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty about what Nikki does and how she sustains herself being a freelancer and how she does project management life. But as always, as part of this podcast, we always do these fireside chats, meaning that we always want to get to know the person before we get into the business, because we believe that people buy from people. So the question what I usually ask people first is, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Ooh, my 18-year-old self, I would say, well, I don't know if I'd say keep going. I was always a worker, so I was uni, interning, working part-time, and as much as it seemed overwhelming then, I think it's really helped me with discipline around my work, so I would say keep going.
Keep going, okay, cool. And what advice would you give to your 27-year-old self? Bear in mind, I don't know your age, so I'm assuming that you might be over 27.
Oh, that's interesting. So I'm not going to give away my age. To my 27-year-old self, I'd say let go of the fear. Let people know when it's too much. So you can't say yes to everything as much as you'd love to. You can't fix everyone's problem. Sometimes you just need to focus on your work and reduce that workload some, because I have a bad habit of saying yes to more than I should be saying yes to in this period of time.
I hear you.
It's a project manager sort of thought where like I can manage this, and you think you can always squeeze something in. You can't. You're not a magician. You're a manager.
I hear you. Yeah. So knowing your limits, knowing your boundaries, and being assertive and know when to say no. I get you. Yeah. What are you most curious about right now?
Right now, I'm very curious about psychotherapy, actually. So I recently, in the last few years, got into podcasts around serial killers, about cults, and also people who sort of scam in terms of like money laundering or just different things. And I'm very interested in the psyche of these people. Are people born this way? Do they develop this over the course of their life? So a part of me is very interested in going back to do a study on, do a degree or some sort of course in psychotherapy.
Psychotherapy or criminology seems like it. Are you interested in like the childhood of how they develop these traits to deceive people, or?
I think psychotherapy is more open because I don't want to. Not everyone who has inclinations for something end up committing the crime that they're inclined to. So I think psychotherapy allows us to just understand psyches. I think the understanding that will be, can we stop people from becoming criminals? So can you spot someone who has a likelihood of being a murderer early enough that they don't end up committing murders? So psychotherapy gives you more scope, I think, than just doing like criminology, because that just focuses on the criminal mindset, which I don't think is the broadness I want from that. Okay.
And what have you learnt so far from delving into like these minds and these podcasts of these people?
What I learned so far, I think something we all know is definitely like abuse plays a large role in how people are shaped, and a lot of times the abuse is generational. So abuse people is definitely a thing, which is very sad, but it's definitely a thing that happens. And as the thing one person can withstand, another person can really crumble under. And I mean, some things are parts to do with DNA. So if, let's say, parent A is abused and they marry someone else whose family has a history of mental illness, and then they bring abuse into that genetic like makeup, that's a recipe for disaster. So it's just quite interesting in terms of how both like nature and nurture play a role in shaping who a person becomes. Okay,
interesting. It's just having like that debate, nature and nurture. Do you blame their environment, or do you just say like, no, you got that, you're individual, you got agency? And how does that play? Okay.
I think, well, it's not always one or the other. So things aren't always a separate sort of conversation, because sometimes your nature and the way you're nurtured both sort of align to make either a great person or a terrible person. So yeah, things aren't very black and white, and we can't always write people off. Even though it's weird, some people you're a terrible person. I mean, what I've also learned, which is I think something we all know, is white men get away with a lot. White men get away with so much. So yeah, a lot of the prolific serial killers are generally arrested a few times for petty crimes that escalate until they get into serial killing. So yeah, you learn how much white men get away with. It's very terrifying.
Very terrifying. They get away with a lot. And then you look at the into the criminal system and how disproportionate certain ethnic minorities are in there. Very interesting indeed. Okay, I feel like I should go back to my degree, which is psychology, which I don't even use.
Okay, I don't use it.
I went to uni. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this degree? But okay. So let's get into, how did you start in project management? How did you start?
That's quite an interesting one, because I think I've only really called myself a project manager in the last maybe year. So I've always done work I've always been very multifaceted in the work that I do. So if I work for a company, I can do everything from sort of content strategy to copywriting to editing to some operation stuff. And that's because I think it's because I like to see structure in things. But I didn't really define it as project management, because I was always employed to either do the copywriting, and then I'd see that there was a flaw in something and be like, oh, let's also fix that while I'm here. So I think when I was coming into my current position, it was sort of, what do you think you can bring best to this? And my options were either to go just strongly as a creative or come in and actually manage projects. And at that point, I was like, I know that I'm going to end up actually managing, because I like to see my projects from start to end. I just don't want to come in and do the creative and tap out. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do project management. And I really, really enjoyed being able to own different areas of a certain project. It means I'm liaising with everyone from start to finish, and I'm really able to shape how a thing is imagined and how it's actually actualized, and that's really satisfying for me.
Okay, so you at the beginning you had lots of skills. You said copywriting, editing. So do you come from a multimedia creative background? Can we just explore that?
Yeah, I have a undergraduate degree in English literature and classics, and I have a master's in American literature.
Sorry, English literature and
classics. So classics is the study of ancient Greek and Roman history, architecture, poetry, plays, religion, philosophy.
Wow. Okay.
Very varied. So my degrees are very literature based, and as much as I like writing, I sort of wanted to see writing in video, in I think social media was emerging at a time when I was doing this, so I could see how storytelling wasn't just in the book, and it wasn't just newspaper articles. I mean, the media was dying also when I was finishing my degree, so I just knew that journalism wasn't really it for me. But I really enjoyed how we could tell stories beyond just the written word. I also went to the theatre a lot. I watched movies a lot. I used to review movies for my university newspaper. So for me, my degrees were never just like, oh, you can write, that's it. It was more storytelling is more than one thing. So no, I didn't study anything to do, I can't edit a video. I can't really do pictures and stuff. I just was able to shape stories to fit different frameworks. So if you wanted copy for a short 2-minute video, I was able to shape it to fit that audience. I also understood audience very well. So I'm very versatile in terms of how you can tell a narrative and across different platforms and for different audiences. So that was one thing I think I did, or I understood by, I think, reading a lot, talking to a lot of people. So I can talk to people quite easily, which is quite good. And I've always sort of been able to read rooms or read where the world's going and sort of adapt quite quickly as a gift of mine. So I started copywriting freelance while I was at university, mostly for free, to be honest. So a friend wants to start a blog or a business, and I just help you do that. And from then on, I saw someone wants to turn that blog into a video, or they want to turn something else. I'd be like, oh yeah, sure. And again, this is I say yes to everything problem. But saying yes isn't always a bad thing. But I think as you get older, your yeses have to become more directed, where when you're younger, your yeses can be a lot more open because you learn the broadness of who you are and what you can do. So in a sense, saying yes from the age of 18, I was like, oh, I can do the same thing, because essentially being a creative in the way that I am, which is mostly around language and words, is the same thing. It's just applying it to different mediums and asking questions. So if someone says, I want you to come into, I've never done a music video, but if someone said that to me, I'd say, I've never done a music video before. However, talk me through the process that you go through to get here, and let's see if we can have an alliance. So it's not just saying yes and trying to figure it out. Saying yes, I can try to do this. Let's just talk through what that looks like. And I think that transparency has really helped me be multifaceted, and also go into different industries and learn so much about the expanse of my talent a lot more, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. So
Yeah.
with copy, obviously you got your English and classic degree, in literature and that's a classic degree. So how do you start with the copywriting? Because it's such a skill to have. It's not easy to write copy.
So interesting enough, I think I was very lucky in my undergrad degree. So I went to University of Reading for my undergraduate degree, and I mean, compared to a lot of my friends who did English literature, I think I had a lot of options. So some of my courses was like, we were made to do summaries a lot, so you had to like summarize and bring your text down to like 5 words, 10 words. I don't know why they challenge us in that way. There was sort of a discipline in terms of how we're telling stories. At the same time, I was writing for the university newspaper, but I was also interning for a startup that was based in Reading. And because startups, and I think it was just 3 of us, so myself, the founder, and one more person, I had to take on so many roles. And it's sort of, okay, we need copy to go on social media posts. We need copy to go. And it was like, everyone just assumes you do literature, you can write, which is a wonderful assumption. But everyone says, oh, you're doing English, you're going to be a teacher. But it was like, this work has to be done. I'm here. I want to learn from this internship, but I also have to bring something to the table. So it was just a lot of me being like, okay. And it was a lot of the founders saying, no, that doesn't work, or not that, because the founder had worked in advertising prior. So that was the bonus for me. She'd worked in advertising prior. So I was then able to get a lot of advice from her, being like, no, that doesn't work for this, or this works. And I was asking questions, being like, why do you think that doesn't work? And she'd tell me why, either the audience or the platform. And that helped me learn so much more. And because we worked so well together, she was recommending me to others going forward. So I sort of built a bit of a network there.
So what I'm hearing is, first of all, is like throwing yourself, like, and not being fearless and doing things and learn on the go. And then second of all, it's the power of when you do a good job and you build really good relationships. It's the power of the referral. So that's how you'll get your work and work spread. Okay, so from that experience, from that startup, how did you build up like your portfolio as a project manager in the creative scene?
So I think one thing I do very well is people I've worked with, I maintain good relationships with them. So the company I interned for, the founder I interned for while I was 18, 19 at university, is the founder whose company I'm working in now today. And that's like maybe across 10 years later, we're back on the same page. And that's keeping that same relationship, which is I've sort of kept in touch. I go visit her. So we have a personal relationship that's kept going past the internship, even into our working relationship today. So I think one thing, I mean, sometimes you can't always blur the line that far into like a friendship. I think one thing that's very important is if you're good with the people you work with, they will talk about you when you're not there. So you want to be talked about without having to be in the room. So that you can then go somewhere and someone says, oh, you worked with this person and they've spoken about you prior, which is what worked for me. And as long as the way a person talks about you is the way you present yourself, which means you have to be consistent and you're able to build a network or you're able to build your portfolio up. So one, obviously I keep working. So I've had personal blogs and shut them down, or I've worked on side projects and probably put them on LinkedIn or talk to people about them. But the way I've really been able to build my portfolio up is through relationship building and relationship sustaining. So not just building it, because you should network and want to meet people that you think are interesting, but you should also not be building relationships because you want something from someone solely. You should be building them because I think there's long-term value in this, not just like short-term gratification. So it's very important that you understand why you're building relationships and to do it in a way that has long-term sustainability.
So, okay, break it down practically, because you use a lot of words that like, I'm just trying to think of like relationship building and sustainability. Like, what does that mean? Practicality, day by day or week by week or month by month. What do you mean?
Okay, so let's say day by day. So if you've worked with someone in the past, let's say you work together on a project and it's a 6-month project. During that 6-month project, you should deliver the work and deliver it in a way that you don't only deliver what you've been asked to deliver, but find areas that you can tweak and shape and be a concrete part of that project, so they feel like you're really you're not just coming on to do a job. You're really taking on this project as something that you own and you want to see yourself reflected in. And beyond that project, it can be you send an email, let's go out for a coffee once in a while, or you just check in. And I think if you work with someone really well, you should definitely do that emailing, like maybe once a month or once every 2 months, like, oh, how are you doing? It would be nice to come in for a cup of coffee, or I just want to check, see how the company's doing. And it can seem very I think people feel like, oh, it feels like I'm begging, or it feels like I'm overstepping. But if you read a relationship right, I think you know that you can check in and it's not a problem, because people want to work with people who are good. Sometimes they just don't have the budget to do it. So we have to understand that as much as we see companies as these entities, companies are functioning with like numbers, and sometimes the numbers just don't align. Numbers might not align for you for 3 years, but maybe 3 years later, that number aligns. But in that time, what you should do, so when you're emailing, be like, oh, be working on other things, even if it's personal. So even if like work isn't coming in like amazingly steadily in that like grandiose way, so you don't have to do big things. Just say, oh, I thought of this idea and I'm working on this in this way, and I've been thinking, and you can even bounce off thoughts with someone you've worked with prior, because you know their expertise is going to be useful. So they're going to see not just that you are proactive, they also see that you value their knowledge, and that's very important in terms of how you sustain those relationships. So I guess two things: keep in contact with places that you think I want to work with again, but also keep building like your personal portfolio by doing projects yourself, or telling people about the work you're doing. And another great place, which some people laugh at me for this, another great place I built up a network is Twitter.
Oh, explain.
So when people put out opportunities on Twitter, so bar just working freelance as a project manager for the company I work with at present, I also do the content editing for Social Fixed. So Social Fixed is an organization that works to improve the BAME access to creative industry roles. I started working on Social Fixed in October 2017, and I'm still working on Social Fixed. And at the time, it had been begun by the founder, Mercedes Benson. And she just put out a call on Twitter being like, I'm looking for someone to help me grow Social Fixed. At that time, it was just like a social media platform she posted jobs on. And I was like, this sounds interesting. I'm very interested in creative industry. I'm very interested in employment in creative industry. And I think the way we can change the way people reach jobs can be quite interesting from a creative perspective. So we had a conversation, we sat down, and today it's, almost 3 years later, we've hosted about a series of events. Our community has grown so much, about 5,000 strong on Facebook, about 4,000 on Twitter, these things. But Twitter has been a good place. When people put out opportunities, look into what that thing is, and maybe have a conversation. So I think we just went for a cup of tea, or we went for a quick, we had a cup of tea or coffee, had a conversation, and then we figured out the relationship, and we've grown the community across that time. So as much as some things seem just like Twitter's banter, I think you can find opportunities in in places you're having fun, you can find opportunities too.
Okay, cool. I did not know that. Okay, cool. I was going to ask you another question. So you lead on to that, but you beat me to it with the Twitter. I was like, okay, so you built up your warm relationships through doing your great work, referrals, word of mouth. That's great. But do you actually pitch? Like, how do you pitch or get new ones in just to keep things going? Because you just don't know. So is Twitter, you said one way. What's another way?
This is one way. And then I think the things you're interested in are places you'd find people that you'd work on projects you like. So one thing I'm very interested in is books. I'm an avid reader. I love reading. And one of the things I champion is African literature. So one thing I did for fun for a few years was just review books for a platform in Nigeria. So I just reviewed books. And it was just a great way to get more books, but also to write about books. Because I think once you finish your degree, it sort of becomes I'm not really reading every day. It was a very different life. Now, from this, opportunities were coming where you could go to book launches. I could go to book prizes also. And at first I was like, no, I'm not really worthy of being there. So you sort of have that, I'm just someone who reviews books for free. What's the point of me going to these things? And I had a conversation with a friend, and she was like, yeah, but this is something you're passionate about. And because one, you studied it and you've been reading for so long. So I've been reading for, I think, since I could talk. You have something to say. So it's not about always being the most quote unquote important person. It's just bring your passion to those spaces. So I started going to more and more events, speaking to people, talking about the work I did, and they talk about the work they did. And in those conversations, it'd be like, oh, I'm working on this. maybe you could come and we can have a conversation about this. And that's how I started building my network. And not everyone I spoke to, I worked with, but sometimes they'd have a conversation with me, see my workload, and refer me to someone else, because the conversation we had was just so promising, but they knew they couldn't either afford to pay me or the project was going a different direction, but they thought I could work for someone else who needed those services.
Okay, cool. So always, just be a good person, do what you're passionate and you don't know, but you might get something out of that.
Don't be ashamed of anything. If you're interested in video games and there's a video game convention, go to that. So the job you might find might not be a video game specific thing, but someone might be working in a different industry that needs your skill set. And that's just the way to go about, I think, building your network. Because go where you're most comfortable. So you don't have to go to like the snazzy Canary Wharf like networking events. If that's not your comfort space, you're not going to shine there. So start where you shine, and then you can grow your confidence to move into more spaces.
Okay, I hear you. So project management, it means so much things to different people. I don't really hear it a lot in the creative industry, so you can break down what you actually do. Another thing, let's start with what project management means to you.
So I'm a project manager in an advertising agency. So what that means is I help turn content strategy into physical assets. So a company might say we want to advertise our product. So what we'd have to do first, the agency I work with has a process in terms of how we understand what messaging we go through for that product, and also what media do we want to share that messaging through. Now, the creative industry, there's so much more we can do now. So beyond just, before you think about the medium you're going to share this in, you're thinking, do I do video? What type of video? Do I do just pictures? Is it going to be just graphics? And then you think, okay, what platforms? There's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google Ads, there's YouTube, like Reddit now, TikTok even. Like brands are jumping in all these things. So my job as a project manager is I liaise between the content strategy team and the production team. So I'm the middle person that says, okay, content strategy, what are we doing? How do we want to activate this? And then I have to move it across to the production team. So I sit between both sides of an agency, and I'm sort of the person who creates a timeline. Also based on what the client wants the end to be, and I make sure we execute. And we bring in the right people to execute also. So it's sort of understanding what content wants to do and thinking, I have to think ahead, like, okay, if we want to do this, do we need to bring in a graphics designer? At what point in this project do we need to bring in that graphic designer so that we meet the deadline? So I'm literally planning ahead of what everyone is and making sure we have the right people and making sure the budget's aligned to bring in the right people.
Okay. You mentioned that you're a content strategist as well?
Yes. So in a sense, I have been doing content all my life, but now I'm having to be part of content strategy because understanding what production needs and content needs is really important. I understand the production side. Well, I can instruct a production side without having to know what production does. It's very hard to instruct content strategy without knowing what content strategy does. So I've been mentored by content strategists, and I'm now sort of more in a junior level as a content strategist, which means I can look at what a brand wants. I can put them through a workshop that the agency I work with does, and we can start building different streams of content, like in terms of understanding how we can send our messaging to consumers, and what the right channels are for that.
Okay, cool. Because I hear all the terms, I'm like, I need to know what all this means.
I know. It's just big words to say. I tell people what to say and on what platforms.
I hear you. Thank you for simplifying for me, because social media just so much diversity, and just like, okay, this is what it means. Okay. So how do you, as a project manager or content strategist, give value to brands?
How do you give value to brands? So I guess the first step is, so everyone's like, if you have a product, like it doesn't matter what it is, it can be a physical product or virtual product, you're very passionate about it, and you can be like, so in the way I can tell you what content strategist is I can tell it to you in the terms I understand. It doesn't mean you understand what I'm saying. It can still sound like garbled nonsense. The first step is telling a brand, okay, I am going to take everything, all your passion, and I'm going to help you dilute it in a way that doesn't lose the messaging. Now, if a brand can feel like you've simplified their messaging but still kept the heart of it, that's step number one. So that's the most important thing. You're like, I hear you. I just want to make sure your consumer hears you too. So the first connection you're doing is the brand feels like you understand what their product is, And the second thing is you can dilute that message without losing the heart of that product. Those are the first two things you're trying to do as a content strategist. When I go into my project manager side, my goal is to be like, what is the timeline we have? What's the budget we have? And tell you what we can produce, honestly, and what time frame we're going to produce that in, and make sure that's delivered. So me as project, my content strategy side is being like, I understand your heart.
Mm-hmm.
I see your heart. My project manager side is, I see your budget. I see your timelines. I can meet that. So sometimes it's a bit hard to straddle because the brand can get stuck in the heart. But I have to come in and say, look, we have to meet this deadline. And you have to, like, and we have, there's certain compromises that have to be made because we need to meet this deadline. So sometimes I have to be like, I can't always be the empathetic content strategist. I have to sometimes be the hardball project manager that's like, if we want to get this done on time, I need you guys to come back to me quicker, or I need you guys to pay this invoice quicker and just be a bit more stern with brands.
Yeah, it's having that overview, project management has constraints. You've got the risk, the quality, the benefits and all that kind of stuff. So it's very important, like, to have that overview and show your clients that you're on it, which sounds like you're very hard. Like, look, this is what you need to do, because there's so much moving pieces and you've got to control as much as you can. Okay, so you did say, because my next question was to talk about the customer relationship, so with that brand. So how do you nurture that, to give them a really good experience? Because I don't know, sometimes in advertising agencies I'm here, it could be months, it could be years, it could be weeks. How do you nurture that and keep that really good client experience going?
I think what is interesting, because I've worked with clients where I can check in once a month and they're fine, and some clients need everyday conversation. The first thing you need to do is assess what kind of communication your client needs. So it's just, because some people, yes, they're giving away the project or they're handing over some of the project to you, but they don't want to feel like they've lost the reins on it. And the problem you can come up against is if you feel resentful of them not handing over the reins. So some people just want to keep close to a project, and that's fine. Just as long as you keep them informed every step of the way. So it might just be one email a day. It might be a 20-minute call a day. That 20-minute call a day could save you like a 3-hour call on a Friday, when actually what you want to do is be winding down for the weekend. And there's some clients that are just like, they're like, I've given this over to you, just give me updates with numbers. Some clients just want to see numbers. So you can just be like, okay, I'll give you an update once a month. So understand what kind of communication your client wants, and you're just going to have like a great relationship.
Okay, I hear you. So as you talked about the client relationship, I'm just wondering how, like, for your clients, I'm trying to word the question properly. So you do the online strategy, or if you're a content strategist, or you do the project management and you producing online products. I'm probably not using the right words, but like videos or copy or digital products, right? So I'm thinking about the customer or the client to their own clients or their own customers, because they're marketing in some way, they're trying to get their voice out some way. So how, with the products, what you produce for the client, how do you build customer confidence that they should trust this brand? They should have a conversation with this brand, or call to action. How do you build that customer confidence?
So I said before, like, one thing you have to do is understand what the product is.
Yeah. Sorry.
And find a way to dilute it for the customer. So essentially, I've been lucky that most of the brands, or all the brands or people I've worked with, I believe in the product, and I also am able to ask questions to the client themselves. So if I'm starting a project, I would ask you tough questions and say, how does this work? How does that work? So before I've even done any of like pushing out to your customer, I want to understand exactly how that product works, so that if you woke me up from my sleep and asked me about that, I could tell you. It might take me 2 seconds to like shake my head, and wake up. I could tell you exactly what that product is. So I think one thing, first of all, that we always do before we do any messaging out is, I'm like, I understand what the product is. I think this is what I can say to the customer. Then you do some research, do some focus groups, or do some phone calls with the customer or the client's customer, and understand that those two things align. The reason I might create a product might not be the reason someone will buy it. So the heart of the product is the same. It's like, this is filling a gap. But the reason I can sell it to someone, or the reason I can get someone to be hooked to it, might not be exactly like it's exactly because of the reason A was created. So I have to go for like, some people are going to want a more like emotional sell. Some people are going to want a more like product focused sell. Some people are going to want to like feel like the company has like ethical benefits. So sometimes, like, I think right now in the season we're in, a lot of people are going to want to buy into like ethical or like environmentally friendly brands in future. That might be what the market looks like. So it's important to understand the product, understand the market, which is what the customer is going to be buying from, and then find a way to bring those two things together. That way you see like this product exists, but also fits into the reality of where we are now. And then when you put out any campaigns, just keep those two things in mind. But also, I think always open channels, which could just be like Instagram DMs or a newsletter, that the consumer can also have conversation back with the company. So I think I always encourage customers or clients to make sure there's an open, like when you're open, especially if you're just launching a product, make sure there's open channels of communication where you can see live feedback from your consumer, because that's going to help you improve your product so much faster and so much better.
I hear you. So going back to storytelling, so it seems like you're a natural storyteller and you do this for a living. You know, there's a lot of people who listen to this who are self-employed or entrepreneurs, maybe solopreneurs. How can we effectively storytell online? Some top tips with a very limited budget. How can we do this?
With a very limited budget.
Or maybe no budget. Let's be honest.
So I'm going to say one thing I think is very important to tell your story is try and do that research. And research could just be asking your friends or asking friends of a friend about what they think, or about if they think X, Y, Z, why they think that might exist. So find someone who might be interested and be like, oh, why do you think this might exist, and understand their reason. I'd say understand their reason, and then I think then weave that narrative into how you're going to push that story out. So if you're going to push out a series right now, you understand that people are either be like, you know, curb your quarantine's going on, understand that. But it can't just be that messaging, because it's like, okay, quarantine's going on, that's A. Then is my audience a black audience? Is it black mothers? Is it young people with kids? Is it just, so break that down. Who's my audience right now? And then be like, okay, what is it they're talking about? So you can go on Twitter and search hashtags and see conversations. So you don't have to have a massive budget. You can just be like, okay, what do I think might be related to what I'm about to push out? That's your research there. Search that hashtag, go on Facebook.
So give me an example then. So give me an example of showing the hashtag onto it.
If I'm pushing something, okay, what might be a product now? So let's say I want to launch like lipstick, beauty. I can honestly just go on Twitter, search the hashtag beauty, lipsticks, lip gloss, everything lip, and you can just like call different conversations people are having. In those, find what people are loving, what they don't like, and where people are seeing their gaps. And from there, you can say, okay, these are the feelings people are having, and then try and figure out who your customer is there. So look into some of those profiles, be like, oh, I think this person might be my customer, that person might be my customer. And you can do this on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, so that you can also see the pictures, see how people's daily lives are moving. I mean, one of the most terrifying and beautiful, like it's both terrifying and beautiful about social media is you can literally see who your customer is and see their daily lives. And this is going to take time. Like this isn't going to be like one day. This might take you a week and a half, 2. But doing this, spending time on this research work is really going to help you, because when you start messaging, you're messaging to who your messaging is going to be directed to who you're trying to reach. So that way, you're not talking to a large audience. Like you're not just throwing out messaging to everyone. You're throwing out to a specific group of people, and that way you also understand how to tag. So there's like tags on pushing content. So if I'm going to create content, I can do tags in the industries, I can do tags according to the industry. So if I was pushing out a new lipstick, I could do tags like just like lipstick beauty influencer. But what I can do to push it further into the audience I want to go for is use tags that relate to the conversations that audience has been having.
What do you mean, hashtags or tags? I get confused.
It's a mix of both, so they work quite similarly. So depending on what platform you're using, so we can say hashtags. So let's say most of my audience is very much into what's a good TV show now that might be about Pose.
Oh, can you do Love is Blind? Have you watched that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that. let's say everyone's then having a conversation around Love is Blind.
Okay.
I can then introduce them. So maybe like Lauren and Cameron.
Yeah, lovely. So sorry, so people haven't know. I don't really watch TV or even Netflix, but I have someone's access to someone's free, so I watch it now free. And Love is Blind, I was skeptical. It's about a blind date kind of show where they never really met each other, and then they get married very, very quickly. That's it. I can't even say no more. And there's so much messiness what goes on. The end. Sorry. But anyway, go to the it couple, Lauren and Cameron, who I love. Yeah.
Oh my god, I honestly love them. So you can slide that into some of the conversations. So if your audience is having that conversation, you can push your product by using sort of hashtags or tagging like towards that demographic, and that way you're not just appearing in the beauty sector, you're appearing in the beauty sector for Love is Blind fans, but also Lauren and Cameron stands. So again, that segment is...
So what I do then, so say it was like Twitter or Instagram, I put hashtag Love is Blind memes, beauty, lipstick, lip gloss.
Maybe, yeah.
It's because you're trying to show that you're into their lifestyle. So you're not just putting like, I don't know, lipstick, red, whatever. You're showing that the type of conversation. Okay, I get it. Okay.
So how the product can integrate into their lifestyle. So it can also be like not just like the tags you use. So you can imbue, like you can the captions you use, or like let's say this is just like you're doing like an Instagram post. So it could be like popping on my whatever the name of the lipstick is to join Lauren and Cameron's wedding on Love is Blind.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like dressing up, and then you know what I mean. So there's a narrative that follows the product, follows the lifestyle, and that way your hashtags align with also the caption you've used. So that's two ways you can merge, and then you can really, really like target your audience that segmented way. So that's one way to sort of push content out.
Okay, that's a new tip. I'm going to try that with my jewelry. And finally, before we wrap up the podcast, is what is the best testimonial or client story you have?
I think, best I've had, I think, because that's been repeated a lot, is I'm very calm when there's a crisis. So sometimes I'm very much a person that's like, okay, if we are at a certain point in a campaign and something's going wrong, I'll say, I'll then look at, in terms of our deadline, I'll say, what can we get done that's still going right in this deadline? Let's start off first, and then we can tackle the problem. Because sometimes fixing the problem can then put us far behind tackling what's already going right. So it's either I say, everyone wants to focus on the problem because everyone starts panicking. So I then do a thing where I say, X, Y, Z, you guys focus on these things are already solved. Then 1, 2 can focus on the problem. So I think I'm very calm, and I'm very good at sort of setting plans, or contingency plans when there are issues. So I think clients say I'm very calm and very good in emergencies, which is a really, really good thing, I think, for a project manager. Because there are a lot of emergencies and there are lots of sort of emotions to manage. And you need someone who, I think, rises above sort of the emotional noise sometimes to get the work done.
Okay, I hear you. It must be very nice to have all these great comments and people say things about you. And
I mean, I've had bad work experiences, but that's another conversation.
That's another there's always ups and downs. You know, that's part of life. But it's good,
yes, and because there are going to be clients you just don't get along with. And while you're in those relationships, it can seem like it's all you, but sometimes that the way you work, as much as I say I'm very calm, like the way someone else works, there's no way I can calmly go into that. Or not calmly, but some people are overly anxious for, like, in a way that I can never be enough for them. Because one thing I used to do in the past was overcompensate and try and, like, if someone was very anxious, I'd be like, no, like, I can solve this. But then I run myself down and become useless in my job. So pulling back has meant that there's some people I just can't work with anymore. And I tried to do that, I think, about a year and a half ago. And that relationship just did not work, because I was like, you're not that person anymore who can overcompensate, because you know that you cannot function if you do that. So it was meant to be about a 6-month project. I think we ended it after 4 months, just because we just weren't working well and together. But I took it very hard, because I'm not very good at not completing a project. But in retrospect, it was not a good working relationship.
It wasn't a good fit. And sometimes, you know, as I get older in like doing stuff in jewelry, I used to just take anywhere. I got to do this work, and then I realized like I can't do that. Sometimes you can tell, you can see the red flags. So when someone goes like, okay, this is a piece of jewelry, and I start with a very low price, or they just give you all this list and demand, you're like, it's just not the right fit. So I'd rather just not have the money, because it's just a headache, you know.
something that's meant to, you end up spending
more time on it.
Money for that project, essentially.
But thank you for being honest about, client relationships can be really good when they're and you can feel in the height, and sometimes it doesn't work out. But hopefully more of the earlier, like you really making these great relationships and producing great work. So where can people hear from you, your work, your portfolio, what you do, be in contact and all that jazz?
Okay, so I'm very bad. I'm trying to rebuild my website. The goal was 2020, but coronavirus, we'll see how far this goes. Just because coronavirus has sort of really increased my workload at the moment. I think I'm one of the few people. Well, not like emergency workers and healthcare workers. I'm sort of in the space where my workload is sort of exponentially increased. In the last 2 weeks, so that's sort of, I know everyone's using this period to sort of like do loads of work they haven't been able to do. I'm somehow not able to do that, which is a bit concerning. But hopefully this year my website comes back. So we'll table that for now. But if you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram. I think Instagram, I'll say follow my bookstagram, which is where I review books. It's Black Girl Rumble, so BlackGirlRumble. So that's just me talking about books all the time. So if you're a reader, definitely find me there. I'm on LinkedIn, of course, so you can see my most recent work on LinkedIn. And on Twitter, I'm mostly chatting nonsense.
Why is that? Why nonsense?
No, I just mean like I don't really use Twitter I don't use it to promote my work. So I can find work on Twitter, but I think you're gonna get a sense of my personality on Twitter. I think that way it lets you know if we can work together a lot earlier than if we try and do like a few months, if that makes sense. So if I'm doing personal projects, Twitter is a good way for us to sort of get a sense of how we sort of speak or what we're interested in general. Because I tweet about everything from like Love is Blind to, I'm trying to think of something ridiculous I follow. To Real Housewives of Atlanta. I mean, I watch a lot of reality TV, so so my references, so if you want someone whose like content references are very much in like the reality TV world, I'm your person any day. But then I'm also tweeting about like African literature. It's a very interesting mix. But Twitter, so it's Nikki, so it's XNIKKIYX.
Great, and I'll put it all in the show notes so you can connect online and nurture new relationships and see where it goes. Well, thank you, Nikki, for being on this podcast.
Thank you so much.
Just lots of blessings, and hopefully, I'm very excited to see more of what you do, and to see like in your personal endeavours. Now I know that you love Love is Blind. I haven't found, even though it's a very, very popular show, I haven't talked to much people about it.
Oh my god, I've made all my friends watch it. Like, I have group chats going on about this. Like, I mean, they've all died down now, but I made everyone watch it.
I'm still like looking on Instagram on memes. There's this Love is Blind memes daily. They still like talk about what's her name, Jessica, like always making memes about Jessica and Mark. It's just crazy.
Bless her heart, the poor girl. Yeah.
Life. Listeners, listen, go and watch Love is Blind. I cannot wait for the other series. And I'm always trying to look for, I know it's kind of died down, but I'm always trying to look for content, because apparently, just in case people are watching it, there's other couples who got engaged, but they never followed those stories. So I need to find where they are. On that.
No, I do wonder actually. Yeah, I wonder
because they didn't have the budget.
There's some articles about this story, so if you sort of do a Google, you find some articles about those stories.
I'm gonna find them because I need to know. Okay, cool. All right, thank you.
This has been really good. It's really challenged me to think about my work. So yeah, really great questions. I love this.
Cool. All right then. Bye.